Can a person stay in the state of grace without pursuing holiness? Hi, I'm Mike Mason. This is St. Joe Society Podcast. The St. Joe Society is a Catholic lay apostolate devoted to help men order all things to Christ by growing strong in mind, body, and spirit. If you'd like to learn more about our work, you can check us out online at stjosephsociety.org. Sorry about that. All right, gentlemen, how y'all doing this week? All right. Last month, we discussed the nature of sin and salvation. This month, we're going to discuss the fundamentals of the spiritual life. Okay, so that's what's on tap for us. Today, we're going to talk about the perfection of the Christian life. And we're going to do this in three moves. Okay, we're going to look at the universal call to holiness out of the scriptures and the Second Vatican Council document Lumen Gentium. We're going to look at our duty to chase perfection. Now, that might sound intimidating to you, but don't turn the video off. Okay, don't turn the podcast off. We'll get to it because we're going to look at the nature of Christian perfection. And I'm hoping by the end of this episode, you'll have a good idea of what the universal call of holiness is. And hopefully you'll be energized and motivated to pursue it. Okay. So an opening quote before we launch in. Then this is from Adolf Tanqueray, which is an author we'll use, I appeal to all the time in these podcasts, as you guys know. His book, The Spiritual Life, excellent one-volume work on ascetical mystical theology. Okay, I pull from him all the time. All right, here's his quote. The supernatural life is the life of God in us, or the life of Jesus in us. It is a life which we must protect against all destructive tendencies. Okay, so the supernatural life is God living in us, and we got to protect this thing. Okay, the Christian life is combat. We have to do spiritual violence. Okay, we have an enemy: the world, the flesh, and the devil. Right, that threefold concupiscence: the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. Okay, we have to tackle these, and we're going to learn to do that in this series. But it is a battle. Okay, this is a fighting sport that we're getting into. Okay, now what I want to look at the perfection of the Christian life is we have to start wrapping our minds around what this is. All right, so let's begin with the universal call to holiness. Now, in the book of Romans, written by St. Paul, chapter 8, verses 28 through 30, listen to this. We know that in everything God works for good for those who love him, who are called according to his purpose. So we'll just stop right there for a second. Notice this, men. Everything works for good for those who love God. Everything. If we love God and we stick with him, everything that happens to us will turn out for our good at some point. Awesome reflection. Okay, we'll continue. For those he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, in order that he might be the firstborn among many brethren. And those whom he predestined, he also called. Those whom he called, he also justified. Those whom he justified, he also glorified. Okay? Beautiful passage. Now notice here, God foreknows and he predestines us to be conformed to the image of his Son. Okay? When he calls us, he's going to justify us. What's justification? It's setting us in right relationship with God. It's reconciling us with the Father through Christ's work on the cross. And through our justification, that process of making us holy, he will glorify us. All right? So notice this trajectory. Everyone who's called is going to be justified, to become sanctified, and to become glorified. Everybody. So this call to become holy, to become saintly, is extended to everyone. In Lumen Gentium 40, it says this: all the faithful of Christ, of whatever rank or status, are called to the fullness of the Christian life and to the perfection of charity. Every one of us is called to be a saint, men. There was, in the late 19th century, there was a debate on whether there was a privileged path to sanctity that was reserved for monks and hermits and great ascetics, and then just the rest of us, get into heaven by the skin of our teeth. And in the late 19th, early 20th century, this debate raged in spiritual theology. And what became abundantly clear, and the church put its rubber stamp of approval on in Lumen Gentium, is that all the faithful are called to holiness, no matter what state they're in. So if you are a father working a 9 to 5, you're called to holiness. And you can become holy through that vocation. You don't need to quit and go join a monastery. No, in your vocation, you can do it. Okay. Now, the twofold thing we got to keep in mind here before we move on to the next point. There's a difference between the image of grace, the sanctification on this earth, and then glorification the next. We got to keep that distinction in mind, okay? Because we're in the process of being sanctified or made holy now. That will only be complete in the next life, okay? So the perfection of the Christian life can only be had in the next life, but we can grow in perfection in this one, which is the perfect segue to our second point. Do we have a duty to tend to perfection? Yes. Matthew chapter 5, verse 48. You therefore must be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. Notice this is a command. I had a gentleman I worked with at one point. He just said, well, that doesn't apply to everybody. False. It applies to everyone. Okay. We are called and commanded to chase perfection. Jordan Amen, another book I cite a lot, Spiritual Theology. Here's what he said, all Christians are commanded to love God above all things, and consequently to tend to perfection by using the means offered them in their state in life. This calling to perfection, gentlemen, is a commandment. We have to do it. All right. Now, we're going to look at the nature of perfection here in a second, but let me give a qualifier. This perfection here is a metaphysical perfection. Okay, more so than a moral perfection insofar as like keeping a list perfectly. Okay, Christian ethics. Okay, I did a whole series on moral theology. So you can go back and listen to that if you're interested. But Christian ethics is not a list of do's and don'ts. That's not a proper way to understand it. Christian ethics is a pursuit of virtues that perfect the person and turn him into what he's supposed to be. Spiritual theology, what we're studying, is helping us to become Christ-like, to acquire perfections or virtues to become the men God made us to be. It's not a list of do's and don'ts that you keep perfectly or you don't, like you check out off the boxes. That's not what this is, okay? Now, clearly, doing the right thing is going to help us grow in perfection. Doing the wrong thing is going to diminish it, clearly. So they're related. But don't keep in mind it's a check the box sort of thing. No, it's an acquiring of virtues. That's what I mean by metaphysical, is it's changing what you are. Okay, which leads us to our final point. What is this nature of this Christian perfection? Here's St. Thomas Aquinas in the Secunda Secundae, question 184, article 1. He says this: a thing is said to be perfect insofar as it attains its proper end, which is the ultimate perfection thereof. So what's he saying here? A thing is perfect when it achieves its end. Let me use a sports analogy for this. Let's say a football team goes undefeated and wins a championship. We would say they had a perfect record. True? True. Are they flawless? No. Every football team's they're gonna miss blocks sometimes. They're gonna have penalties. They're gonna have flaws. But perfection is they achieved the end they were after. On a weekly basis, that's winning a game. On the season basis, it's winning all the games in the championship. So the team can be perfect with flaws. Well, the same sort of concepts here. That's why the check boxing doesn't help, okay? The point of our life is to love God, okay? We can do that despite the fact that we have flaws, that we sin from time to time. Here's Aquinas. Now it is charity that unites us to God, who is the last end of the human mind, since he that abideth in charity abideth in God, and God in him. 1 John 4:16. Therefore, the perfection of the Christian life consists radically in charity. Aquinas continues in Article 3 of question 184 in the Secunda Secundae. Primarily and essentially, the perfection of the Christian life consists in charity, principally as to the love of God, secondarily as the love of neighbor. Okay, here's Tankery. All perfection consists in the love of God and the love of neighbor. When we have a call to be holy, When we have a duty to tend towards perfection, what is it? It's loving God and loving neighbor. It's not a list of keeping do's and don'ts. It's not a proper understanding of perfection. We are perfected when we love God. The whole point of the moral law is to help us to love God. That's the point. It's not to check boxes. Now, as we'll discuss in the future, it's important to be diligent in your moral life. It's important to be diligent in your spiritual disciplines. So there are boxes to be checked. But what's the motivation? What's the goal? What's the end of the moral life, the end of the spiritual life, the end of all the spiritual disciplines? Love of God, secondarily, love of nature. We grow in perfection because we grow in love of God. We grow in perfection because we grow in love of neighbor. That's what's going on here. Okay. And then the way we do it, and here's the application. Okay. Practice the rule. Guys, the rule we've committed ourselves to, the weekly mortification through physical exercise, the weekly setting a couple sessions aside to study, okay, to grow in wisdom, the daily prayer routines, the monthly confessions, getting before the Blessed Sacrament. You do this to love God. That's the point. It's not to check boxes. It's to grow in love of God and love of neighbor. That's why we do it. So I will return to the question I opened the episode with. Can a person stay in a state of grace without striving to grow in holiness? Can you guys just go, man, Mason, this perfection and got to be perfect? Like, I don't know. I don't think that's what I want to do. Well, can you just say, I'm not going to grow. I'm just going to hold firm where I am? Well, here's what Tankery says. In the state of fallen nature, one cannot for long remain in the state of grace without striving at the same time to make progress in the spiritual life, and the exercise oneself from time to time in the practice of some of the evangelical counsels, which are poverty, chastity, and obedience. So can you stay in a state of grace and not pursue perfection? No. Guys, I coach sports. I like football a lot, but I like all sports, but I'm a big football fan. We always tell our players, a fan and coach and stuff, we always tell the players I coach, you're getting better or worse all the time. There is no neutral. So you're either in the weight room, on the practice field, getting a little bit better, or you're falling behind because someone else is getting better. There's no neutral. Guys, the spiritual life is the same way. Now, this constant striving after growth, this doesn't mean running 1,000 miles an hour. It means you have a plan for growth. That's our rule of life. And each day you're getting a little bit better. It's the whole idea of just get 1% better each day, right? Just get a little bit better each day. Because when you string those things together over 2 months, 6 months, a year, you really start to make some noticeable progress. Okay. Those of you guys who lifted weights in school, or maybe hopefully you do now still. Okay. From workout to workout, you can't really tell much of difference. But I'll tell you what, you're consistent with those weightlifting workouts for 6 months. You look at yourself in the mirror and you're like, holy cow, I'm changing. That's what we need to be here. So the rules there, guys, to help you keep making progress day in and day out, stay in a state of grace, and you may turn around one day, look at yourself in the mirror and go, holy cow, God turned me into a saint. Okay, that's the idea. So, all right, lots of food for thought for you guys there. Hey, all the lecture notes I use are online. I put those on there for you guys so that you can track along. So if you want to pull these up on your computer and listen and read along with me, that's why I put all that effort into that. So that you guys, I want to put you guys in the best position to understand this stuff. Okay. So that stuff's there for you. So if that helps you, please jump on there, use it. Guys, stay consistent with the rule, keep meeting with the guys, and we'll keep growing. So, all right, that'll be good for this week. So God bless you guys. We'll see you next time.